This podcast is sponsored by Inside Out Group, the specialists in high-risk and challenging filming and time-lapse, covering health and safety videos for rail, construction, and infrastructure projects nationwide.
And we're live. Welcome to this week's Safer Than Your Average podcast. On the show this week, we've got Bruce Durham. Bruce's strapline on his LinkedIn is empowering happy people to get more right first time. And that's quite a big statement. Let's talk about that a little bit, Bruce. Do you want to come in and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about
that? Yeah, absolutely. So, Blair, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your podcast. So about empowering people to get more right first time. That's what I try to do. That's what everybody who works alongside me tries to do when we work alongside organizations. It's the crux of human performance. If you help people to connect, if you help them understand their thoughts and feelings, and they're more in control of those thoughts and feelings, then there's some magic that happens there. You know, the foundation of all decisions, that inner voice, that inner critic that will force you or coerce you to turn left or turn right or take the shortcut or not take the shortcut. But also that inner critic that can be really unhelpful to your feelings, to your well-being, etc. That's where I get, even now as I'm talking about it, I get some real joy from that. You know, helping people focus on that basic level of just being more aware and in control of their thoughts and feelings. Because ultimately, if you can do that, then there's magic happens everywhere. Safety, performance, operational efficiencies, you know, the whole bang. But what you've got at the core of that is a person firing on all cylinders. So yeah, I'm going to stick by my strapline if that's all right with you.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to this one, Bruce. So let's just go back to the beginning then. If you want to tell us a bit about your early life, where you grew up.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in just north of Newcastle, right on the east coast. Didn't really have anything, you know, extraordinary happen as a child or anything, but in my childhood, that's where my obsession, if I can call it that, with how the brain works, psychology. We didn't have any other sports other than football and boxing that was offered to us. And to be fair, I wasn't really great at either of them. So when I would do that, I often found my crux, my passion was to go to the library. And from a young kid, 9 or 10 years old, I had one of my neighbours who used to be the librarian. She used to let me come in because I was too young to get a library card. But I would go in there and I would read book upon book upon book about like wars or warriors or battles or, you know, like sort of psychology, little experiments that were going back there. And that's a trait that I still carry forward to this day. I mean, my office here, I've got absolutely shelves just full of books. And, you know, when you look at kids, you say, oh, you know, can you see the character development? I think that was one of my, you know, that was actually one of my traits, is to be able to, I like a bit of quiet, even though I can be quite gregarious when I'm interacting, that little bit of quiet, but I love losing myself in a book. I love learning. So yeah, grew up in Newcastle, not very good at the football, even worse at the boxing, but loving reading books, exploring the minds, etc. But then where that come from, which is where I started to get into the actual psychology and the coaching, is that because I wasn't very good at boxing, I started to say, okay, is there a different angle? Because I would go and I would basically get beat up in sparring. I used to get beat up in sparring. Sometimes I could hold my own. I'm sort of, you know, maybe exaggerating this a little bit. But I thought, okay, how can I get out of the sparring sessions? You know, how can I actually still go to the boxing, do all the fitness, but just not get beat up? So it was a self-preservation mechanism that I needed to come up with an option B. And what I did do is I convinced the head trainer to let me work alongside him, but by the time I was about 14, 15, to start doing some coaching work. Again, so I was simply going to a book, reading about this psychological technique or coaching technique, and then coming back into the boxing gym and then practicing it on the guys in there. And really that's where my coaching background came from, because I had a real, you know, enjoyment of exploring my own thoughts and learning about the brain and what makes us tick. But also that if I got good at it and the guys really enjoyed it, and it was all men in that, you know, in that gym at that particular time, then it allowed me to deviate, to mitigate the sparring session so I could go home without getting beat up, which was, you know, a ticking on sort of both sides. Then when I started to more evolve my skills, that's where I ended up going to Newcastle College on a nighttime course. And that's where I got my first psychological qualification. So it was a diploma in sports psychology. Again, all about performance, goal setting, removing barriers, all this type of stuff. So when I was 18 years old, I was looking, okay, what do I do now? So I had taken business studies, biology, I had got my personal trainer certificate, I had got my diploma in sports psychology. And then this was my real first lesson, is I hadn't really researched enough about how much personal trainers didn't get paid. I just had this image I was going to make millions. Yeah, I was absolutely going to make millions. And when I actually done all the training, done all the qualification, I was like, I can't live on that. So I ended up, pottering around for a little bit. And at the age of 20, I ended up applying for the RAF. Because where I come from in Northumberland, unless you're really involved in an industry that involves fish or sheep, they were the sort of two biggest employers at the time, There wasn't much of a career, and that's what I was looking for. I was always driven, I was always inquisitive, I always wanted to be like the best version of me, I was always looking for that something else. And there just wasn't that available at the time, so I ended up one day being in Newcastle, being the sort of social type of guy that I am. I ended up speaking to an RAF guy on the street, and he was working at the careers office, and I had 45 minutes to wait for my bus to get back home. So I ended up going in there, and that's how I ended up joining the RAF. So when I was 20 years old, I ended up joining his aircrew, so I was a load master. Yep. And when I started talking to the guy, I realised that the Yellow Sea King that I had watched for years coming down on Lifeboat Day, etc., the guy had convinced me that that was a cool job to go for. And I was like, okay, yeah, actually, that is a cool job to go for. Fishermen or flying around in a helicopter and go to all these cool destinations. So that's what I've done. I ended up going to RAF Cranwell, which is the officer and aircrew selection. So it's like the station where they train all the aircrew and officers. And that's when I was 20 years old. So I went down there, done my basic training, done my trade training, and that's what then took me into the RAF. And that's really, as well as the coaching and sort of, let's call it basic psychological background and training and qualifications that I had, that's where it really started to take on a new level when I was, I was almost running, I didn't realize it at the time, but when we were landing, I was doing like off the hook coaching sessions, review sessions, one-to-one development, etc. And then I ended up operationally serving in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Sierra Leone. And at that particular time there, I mean, hats off to the Army girls and boys, mate. They were, they were really in the front line. And I saw some stuff too, but from the stuff that I saw, what really got my interest was I've always been a people watcher. I love sitting back and, oh, well, why do they do this? Or are they aware? And a lot of the body language stuff that I do on YouTube as well helps me in my job to realize, okay, is somebody looking uncomfortable, but they're not saying, okay, why they, do they know that they're uncomfortable, or they're scared to say what they're feeling? So in an operational area where you've got critical time frames to hit, I was really interested and blessed in a way that I had the exposure to look and think about why certain people reacted differently under the same conditions, if that makes sense, Blair?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, so you're sort of surrounded by all this, very high impact, high demanding, critical, very dangerous situations.
Yeah.
And some people would react like A, some people would react like B, and some people react like C. And I'd look at this and I'd try different techniques with them because I was in charge of a team when we went there. So I was working on what was called the VC-10 at the time. So imagine going on holiday, all of the seats taken out, all replaced with stretcher posts, and we would get the critical casualty teams. They would be bringing on people who were severely ill, wounded, trying to keep them alive until we took them back to Germany or somewhere in the UK, depending on their injuries. So that was like baptism by fire, where I was enabled, like the situation gave me the opportunity in a weird way to try out these techniques on myself to see if I could handle these situations better, because not everything I saw landed well with me. Not everything I saw, made me happy. I was scared. I was fearful. I went through the full range of emotions, but then also with the team that I was leading, it allowed me to start really understanding different personality traits, different needs, different demands, different requirements.
Yeah.
And then, that experiential learning of actually going out and trying it in real time and getting it right and getting it wrong and always learning, that sort of set me up where I got a real in-depth understanding, as well as self-study and other qualifications about psychology, coaching, leadership, bringing teams together, but also the acceptance is that every single person thinks, feels, and acts. And that is the one thread that is a thread that connects us as human beings. It doesn't matter what industry you work in, you know, whereabouts you come from, what country, etc., is that every single person thinks, feels, and acts in their own unique way. Now, there will be commonalities, absolutely, there will be commonalities, but there's also big differences. But I learned, and that was the start of my real learning, that if you can help people to think, feel, and act better in their own way, then that empowers them to be a better version of themselves. That helps them to get more right first time. That helps them to be more in control of their thoughts and feelings. So I did that for about 8 years in the RAF, come out, set up my own company. Being aircrew, you're immersed in human factors, you're immersed in crew resource management. And as well as all the self-study and, you know, other educational courses that I've done, I took this out into industry and I started training organizations like Balfour Beatty, Rio Tinto, AMEC, Babcock, National Grid, Severn Trent Water, a load of companies that I was so fortunate that I actually believed in what I was doing. And that took me, you know, around the world up until about 2014, where I had done some really good work for Balfour Beatty. Now, this was the guys and girls and the pilots. And at that particular time, I had a friend who was the director of safety, and we had become friends by then. Really, really brilliant woman called Angela Barker. And she had started working for Siemens Wind, as it was at the time. So you've got, you know, people working on pylons, as in they don't come to the office, they're in the middle of a field, they are totally remote workers, they've got micro environments going on. So really the management has got no clue about what's really going on in site. Although you've got pylons and you've got wind turbines, effectively it's exactly the same. Yeah, exactly the same. Apart from you got onshore or offshore, on offshore, you've got an opportunity where as soon as they get on the boat, management haven't really got a clue what's going on. And then you can get 2 or 3 turbine technicians just getting up on that turbine, shutting the door behind them, and they really have got a micro environment going on there. So there was an opportunity to come along and be the lead safety performance coach for Siemens Wind. I was contracted at the time, spent a few months working there. They seemed to really like what I do and the energy that I bring and the different angles that I brought, just about how to approach what we call safety. And I ended up being there for 2.5 years. So I was meant to be there for 4 months, but yeah, 2.5 years later, I was there. So I went through that transition, lead safety and performance coach for Siemens Gamesa, and that was Northern Europe, Middle East, onshore and offshore. I think that's the right title that it was. It was probably the biggest title that I've ever had. But then there was an opportunity that come along to enable me to go out and again, set up my own business. And that's what I'm doing now, as in, I see me as that I've sort of set out my fruit and veg store, and I'm selling what I firmly believe in. And some people will come by and they'll have a look and say, "Oh, Bruce, that's not for me. We sort of don't get the thinking, feeling, acting. It looks nice, but it's not for us. Have a good day," and I'll tip my hat and I'll carry on. But then there'll be some people who really get how people think, feel, and act. They'll see the Hulk in themselves. They'll understand that emotions drive behaviors. They'll understand that if we can help people to think, feel, and act in a more controlled way, I'd be more aware of their thoughts and feelings, then you get better versions of themselves. And I'll enjoy working with them because that's the fruit that I want to sell. So this is where I am now. Been doing this for about 1.5 years, really loving the clients that I'm working with, exploring, experimenting, you know, taking different angles. But it's all around accepting the fact that we're not just one. We are not a robot. You've got totally different variables of employees within an organization. And me personally, really loving the fact that they're open and curious enough to experiment with how can we get our employees, how can we support them, how can we empower them to become happier and get more right first time by being more in control of their thoughts and feelings. And that brings us up to here. And now I am here talking to Blair on the podcast.
So you mentioned the Hulk within there, Bruce. Let's explore that a little bit more. Tell us a bit about the theory behind that.
Yeah, sure. So the Hulk, obviously, you know, the monkey, the chimp paradox, it's the same type of thing. I just call it the Hulk. And why I call it the Hulk is because the Hulk, most people recognize the Hulk, and from a visualization perspective, we get it's a person, and then the anger and emotion comes out, and it gets bigger and stronger. And I'm not saying anyone's clothes start popping off in the office or something like that, but we've all got the ability to lose emotional control. We've all got the ability to lose ourselves in the moment, and we need to accept that, because we can never get rid of the Hulk. All right, we can never get rid of that defensiveness or that aggressiveness or that trigger. But what we can do is we can become more embracing of the fact that we have got a Hulk, that we do get defensive, that we do get angry, that we can become emotional or forgetful, whatever it may be. But by accepting the humanistic traits that we've got and not pretending that they don't exist, trying to push them away, is that actually we become more in control of the Hulk. We start to pull the Hulk strings. So although the Hulk may present itself, and it does, and it wants to, is that we reduce the impact. We reduce the amount of time that the Hulk is present. Now that's fantastic, Blair, from a well-being perspective, from a mental health perspective, from a safety perspective, but also from an overall performance perspective. But that's the Hulk. That's one of the parts of the program that we deliver. Recognizing that I've got a Hulk, you've got a Hulk. And recognizing also that we can't do it as an individual. We've all got the capability to be lost in that moment, which is why we need that psychological safety within that team to be able to come around, put an arm around someone's shoulder, or point out in an empathic way, is your Hulk showing up? Is there a better way we can do this? So that's just a little bit, and that always goes down well with clients, because sometimes I'll ask, do you recognize the Hulk in yourself? And I may get it, they don't want to. I say, okay, well, what about the person next to you? Oh, yeah, I recognize it in him. Absolutely, I recognize it in him. Yeah. But again, it's about how you deliver that information. It's about, will they remember the Hulk? Absolutely. Is it nice? And again, what we're doing is enabling conversations here, rather than saying, Blair, you're getting angry. Blair, do you think you're recognizing your Hulk coming out? It's just a totally more empathic way of enabling more collaborative conversations. But yeah, that's a little bit about the Hulk there, Blair.
Brilliant, Bruce. Thank you. So you've obviously had quite a long journey in your health and safety career. Can you tell us a bit about your biggest challenge in health and safety to date?
Yeah, sure. So my biggest challenge in health and safety would come around, if I can say it, the acceptance. So we call it human error. All right. When I say we, there's a phraseology that exists at the moment called human error. And by calling it error, what we're already doing, our conscious or subconscious biases, we're already apportioning blame. We're already saying they're wrong, because to be forgetful, all right, to get things wrong, to get emotional, to press the wrong button, etc., etc. It's not necessarily error. It's being human. Yeah, It's being human. And one of the things that I've tried to convey is that we can all get it wrong. Yeah, we can all get it wrong. Because often you'll understand this as a safety professional, is that sometimes you'll get an incident that comes across your desk. And I say, okay, we'll take it to the management. The management will get a text message, or they'll get some type of notification. Oh, why so-and-so done this? Well, the reason why you're getting the text message on your, on your phone, or it's because you're probably working in an office. Yeah, you're working behind a desk. The people who are having the incident haven't got that privilege of working behind a desk, so they're already more, the likelihood of that occurring there, of course, it's going to be higher than you, because your work environments at a baseline level are already different. So it's getting that across about, it's not human error, but actually it's being human. And when we start to work with the fact that we've all got these human, behaviors that can be displayed at any time, depending on the situation, the environment, the triggers, what's going on externally or what's going on internally. We've all got those there. And I think that would be my biggest challenge, is in when something occurs, trying to get somebody to walk 5 minutes in the person's shoes who it's occurred to, in order to help you start balancing that story. Yeah, because I get it's going to affect your performance. I get it's going to affect your profitability. I get the HSE might get I get all this, yeah, but that's going to happen. But in order to be more balanced and factual, and for you to control your Hulk, that was the biggest goal of me, is to help maybe walk through senior management or people who are investigating the incidents, let's just walk on 5 minutes through that person's shoes, so we
Yep.
can maybe understand their environment first, so we can maybe hold our story, that reality that we are making up, to help us approach it in a more balanced and curious way than maybe a bias-driven approach where we're already creating the end in Blair.
Yeah. I had a great coach that once told me, before you get angry or before you get worked up, or even if you're trying to analyse something, take yourself out of the position and put yourself in the other person's position. Think about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and why they've reacted in the way that they have. Have a think about that before you come up with the answer and go and speak to them, and then practice the conversation before you go and speak to them. So I'll have that 10 minutes in the mirror in the morning. If I know I'm going to have a big meeting, I'll stand and look at myself and rehearse what I'm going to say and how I'm going to interact and how I'm going to position myself in the room to go out and deliver that message.
It is, absolutely, and I think there, it's, you know, if it empowers you, if it supports you to have the best conversation, then we really should keep doing that. And I call it putting on another set of glasses. It's as simple as that, another set of glasses. So when you get the information, this is what and remember, we can't not judge, all right? And again, we speak about it, let's actually be authentic here, Blair, all right? Is that we can't not judge. We hear the saying, don't judge a book by a cover. All right, don't judge a book by its cover. I've never heard so much waffle in all my life. I judge everybody I meet in a heartbeat. In a blooming heartbeat. Yeah?
Everybody does.
Everybody does. We can't not do it. Yeah, we can't not do it. We are programmed. Yeah, we are programmed to make split decisions. Heuristic bias comes into it. Lots of stuff like that. But where we have got that ability, is to become aware of our thoughts, is to become aware of what we are thinking, to then challenge them, to then say, okay, what other choices have I got? I'm aware of that narrative I'm creating. And that's what I call putting another pair of glasses on. Put that other pair of glasses on as if you are the person you're now thinking about, what's going on in their world. What could it, and again, this is just made up, but by asking what's going on in their world, what could they be thinking? What pressures are they facing? You know, let's actually think about their characteristics, their genetic makeup, etc., etc. What it helps you to do is just balance that seesaw a little bit more, so you're more factual, more open, more curious when you approach that situation, rather than going in and having the final chapter already written down, Blair, you know?
Yeah, one of the most successful people that I've seen that's done something like that is a guy that I knew, and he used to be the opposite of everyone else. So he used to watch all of these financial gurus like Grant Cardone and Warren Buffett and all these kind of guys speaking and talking about all the great stuff that they were doing and all the money that they were making. Tony Robbins was another one that he used to watch. And he used to go away and Google for hours and do research on the flaws in their argument and where they were getting it wrong to try and disprove them. But he always worked on the mindset of, well, no, there's something not quite right here. Why are they so great at it? I need to really unpick that and analyse it, get to the bottom of it. And it was just a total different way of thinking. Yeah,
absolutely, man, absolutely. I think, you know, when you look at it from... and that has got some benefits to it. When you look at like neurodiversity and using different capabilities or cerebral capacities in order to do different jobs, you know, there's actually if everybody was optimistic, you'd probably miss some gaping holes. And there's some research, and I can't remember the exact research being done, but that, you know, there's a few bits of research that suggest that it's always good to have someone who's more disposed to like a depressive nature within the team, because they will look at it why it will go wrong. They will look at what will go wrong with it, why it won't work. And you absolutely need that in there. You know, you were talking about your friend that you absolutely need someone to look at that angle as well as why it will work in there. So that's the beauty of building a team as well, Blair.
Yeah, totally. So you've worked with some really impressive teams over the past couple of years as well. What's been your favourite one that you've worked with, Bruce, or what favourite business project that you've worked on?
Do you know what? And I'm not just going to say this because my clients will probably be watching it. Is that I generally, if I've got an opportunity to work with people, now I work from CEOs all the way across to people putting drains in, etc., is that I just like that human to human connection. Regardless, remember, thinking, feeling, acting, the premise that I deliver on, the hope, the ladder that I could talk about. Every single person has got those 5 behaviors, those 5 things that I talk about, that I try to expose. So whether you're a CEO of a, you know, £1 billion company, or whether you're across the other side and you're digging holes in a field, they will think, they will feel, they will act. They've got a Hulk within inside them. They've got a ladder, fact or fiction ladder as we call it here, that they'll take some data, they'll add some emotion on, they'll add a belief, they'll turn it around, they'll create a reality. And that's the benefit that I get with my job, is that's why I can walk into any industry. I was having a chat with one of the boxing coaches that I work with, and he's like, oh, well, you psychologists, etc. I said, well, just sort of calm down on the phraseology there. He said, but you don't understand boxing. I don't have to understand boxing. I'm not trying to teach them. Don't get this wrong. I love boxing. I've already alluded to the fact that I wasn't very good at it. But I do love the sport of boxing. But I don't have to know boxing. I don't have to know turbines. I don't have to know nuclear sites. I don't have to know, pylons. What I do know is people. And people are people all over the globe. And what my work focuses on is the thinking, the feeling, and the acting. And that's why, I couldn't say, oh, like team 1 was really great, or team 2 words are great, or team 3 was fantastic. Is that every single person that I've come across, every single person loves finding out about how they think, feel, and act, because it's interesting, because it's about them. I'm not coming in to talk about me. I'm saying, do you know you think these ways because of X, Y, and Z, and this how affects, this impacts how you feel, and put those two together, this impacts how you behave. And oh yeah, I recognise this, or I've done this, or 3 years ago I've done that. So for me, I couldn't say there's a specific team that I enjoy, just a team of people.
Yeah. Okay, that's brilliant, Bruce. So you've progressed pretty far in your career. You've now got your own business. Where do you see yourself progressing to in the future? What's next for Bruce?
Well, I've got a mission. So I've got, if I can tell a little bit about my background, going just a little bit backwards here, is that I've got 3 stepchildren and 2 children of my own. Mm-hmm. And my stepchildren's dad and my now wife, a number of years ago, were involved in an incident where they were travelling up the A1 towards Berwick, and coming towards them, they had a lorry driver from Holland. Mm-hmm. And he pulled out when he shouldn't have done, behind a mobile crane. And when he pulled out, Alan and Kelly went straight into him. So this is the kid's dad and my now wife. Alan was killed on impact. And Kelly, my wife, she suffered brain injury, skull fracture, 6 broken vertebrae, a ruptured spleen, broken pelvis, severe internal bleeding. And the kids were told, and so I do a lot of public speaking, and this is like a little bit, I'm just doing a sort of crazy version of the presentation that I give. Mm-hmm. But the bit that even now I'm about to say, I can feel my globus and I can feel my throat tightening here, because it really impacts me now. I've spoken about this all over the world thousands of times, but when I speak about it, I still feel that emotion, Blair. Is that the kids were told, because of the severity of the situation, the police liaison officer, the headmaster, they were at school, Jack was 9, John was 10, Sophie was 12, got them into the corner at lunchtime and said, look, there's been an accident, your dad's been killed, your mum, we don't think she's going to make it either. We've got to get you to hospital, because essentially they were trying to get the kids to hospital so they could say goodbye to their mum, because obviously the dad, Alan, had been killed on impact. So I see the output of when somebody makes an error. Yeah. And there's a lot of public speakers that, and I know this from my job as lead safety performance coach within Siemens and Siemens Gamesa, they'll come and they'll tell their story, and I look at it and I think, and what? It's powerful. I hear you. It's tragic what's actually happened to them. But then, where's the tools and techniques? Where's the data that I can actually do something to really try and prevent that occurring? And what me and Kelly and the kids have talked about is that the authentic truth, Blair, the authentic truth, is it could be easy to throw boulders and hate, let's just call it like it is, towards that driver. Mm-hmm. But when you put on the different set of glasses and you look at it from his perspective, when I actually come out in court and the guy went to jail, he had got up late. He didn't want to tell his boss. He was going on holiday the next day. His boss was then ringing to I think it was, so he had a schedule of loads that he was picking up that was already round packed. And his boss wanted to fit in an extra load, but he was already running late. So he's like, I don't want to tell my boss, and now I'm rushing and I'm going on holiday the next day. His wife thought that he was going to be late, so he was trying to pacify her, and then he got stuck in traffic on the A1 just past Edinburgh. So you put all this together, his Hulk was firing.
Yeah.
He wasn't in control of that situation. That environmental situation, that internal narrative, that Hulk was pulling the strings of that particular driver. Now, does that make him evil? No. Does that make him, sort of a monster? No. What it does is it makes him human. And again, me and the kids and Kelly have had loads of don't get us wrong, it's been horrific, the impact that's played out with Kelly, with her injuries, and then trying to obviously bring up 3 kids as well. So she's lost a husband, she's got near fatal injuries that she's trying to rehab with, and then 3 young children have lost their dad. But we put that in a pot, and that's here, and that's tragic, and that's horrible, and it's been so impactful, the amount of stuff that they've gone through as a family. But then across here, you've also got a human who was impacted by pressure, by narrative. His mental health wasn't brilliant at the time. He ended up going to jail. He ended up getting divorced. Anecdotal evidence, because it was a local jail where he was initially. He tried to take his own life in that first few weeks before he went to his main jail, if I can call it that. So my mission, if you will, is that I haven't met anybody. Now, I'm an enthusiastic guy, and I've got a whole background in psychology and coaching and performance and everything like this. But there's nobody that I've met globally, Blair, who can dent my enthusiasm that I believe everybody, through awareness, through talking, through authenticity, through embracing human behaviors and what we are, not error, it's what we are. If we recognize the Hulk when the Hulk starts to appear, if we recognize our ladder when we start telling ourselves story and getting into that zone, then we're more likely to be able to move back from it. So again, what do I see myself doing in the future? I've got 3 kids who I see every day who haven't got their dad. And I'm in such a privileged position, if I can call it that I've got the skill, the enthusiasm, the drive, and the ability to go out there and talk about just some what could be seen as basic stuff, in the hope that someone else doesn't lose their dad or their mother or their sons because they weren't in control of their Hulk. So that's me. That's what I'm doing. I've got a legacy of a dad who is no longer here, and I've got 3 stepchildren looking at me who I love, and I've been in their life for years now.
Yeah.
But I believe, I don't know, it's an assumption on my part. But if that driver, if that human, if that person like you or I had a bit more awareness to recognize that Hulk was creeping up on him at that time, and he was starting to become irrational, he was starting to become aggressive, with his driving and taking risks, etc. I just hope he would have had the chance to be able to take that foot off the accelerator, to plan it more logically, to be more in control of his environment. So that's me. That's where I see myself doing what I'm doing now, because I know, and from working with organizations and people, some ladies and gentlemen who are coming to the end of their career. So you know what, Bruce, if I knew this 30 years ago, I'm not just talking about work here, I would have had a better life.
Yeah.
So that's me. That's the feedback that really drives and gives me a little smile inside, Blair.
That's brilliant, Bruce, and that's such a powerful driver inside as well, to keep you pushing all the time, to keep delivering that message. Just to move on a little bit, I'm going to ask you now about what advice you would give to someone starting out in health and safety today, because there's obviously a lot of different schools of thought on health and safety and industry. Let's talk about what Bruce would advise people to do getting involved in health and safety today.
Sure. Well, for me, I would advise what I believe in. I would advise what I'm enthusiastic about. And what that would be is that never forget what you're trying to do, at least from my perspective, is you're trying to engage with people. Mm-hmm. You need to get out there. You need to understand people. Yeah, there's different, structures and policies and rules you can make up. But we're not black and white. We're not one or two. Is that we've got loads of different characteristics, capabilities, thought patterns, ways of doing things, depending on the time we get up, the time of day, what we've had for breakfast. Oh, it's such a grey area. There's a load of grey area, but that's the area that I like to dance in. actually get used to having people skills, to be able to go and have a conversation, to actually have the confidence to go and say, tell me more about this. What's going on in your world? Or, tell me a bit from your perspective. Because we can read the books and we can come up with the regulations and everything that I'm talking about that you'll recognize as well. We can all do that. But at the end of the day, what we've got is a human being with a head and a heart who thinks, feels, and acts, who's got a hook, who's got a ladder, who put that all together. You've got a variable type input, an emotional type reaction that can sometimes go off a tangent. And I know 2 and 2 should equal 4, but sometimes it equals 64. Sometimes it'll equal 92 because of the nature of human beings. So I would say invest some time in learning about humans, invest some time in learning about behaviors, emotions. Look at yourself. Learn how you react, learn how you learn how you make it defensive or etc. All these behaviors, so you can now have this space to be able to open up to. It's what I call creating a space around the campfire. So if I'm talking to 1,000 people or I'm talking to one person, in my head I'm seeing this little cozy campfire. This little cozy campfire that I'm coming to them. I'm saying, tell me your story. Tell me what's going on in your world. Tell me, the things that I'm unaware of that you're thinking about, that's influencing you. But I'm going to sit here on this cozy campfire and I'm going to, let you tell my story. And I think we could all benefit from maybe improving our people skills, because fundamentally, that's the thing, that's the bit, that's the object that, that's our focus tends to be around about people. And we can do the numbers and the spreadsheets and all this type of stuff, but ultimately you've got to go out there and engage with people and speak with people and be comfortable with people. The amount of people that I find, and that's where I've generally been used in organizations, not just as a consultant, but as an internal employee. The senior leaders who actually aren't very comfortable with people or who don't get people. They're brilliant with numbers, absolutely brilliant with numbers, which is why, from a neurodiversification perspective, that's probably why they're in the role that they do. But what do you mean I've got to go and have a conversation with them, Bruce? Well, you go, oh no, I'm happy behind my keyboard here. And again, that's okay. It's okay to be more comfortable behind that, but just be aware that there could be a gap there. So I would say somebody coming into the safety profession, and remember, safety, in my opinion, just like leadership. In fact, Blair, why not try you here? All right, well, I'm just going to try a little experiment with you.
Live experiment. Let's go, Bruce.
Let's go. Right, okay. So, now again, this is just my opinion. I'm not after anybody agreeing or disagreeing. But from a people-based perspective, I say to people, does safety exist? Yeah, from a people-based perspective, does safety exist? What would you say to that, Blair? And again, maybe I'm putting you on the spot, and I make no apologies for that, Blair.
It's an invisible force. We can't hold it up in a glass and say, this is safety. Look, we're spilling some out here. It doesn't exist. It's a perception of the mind and people's perception, how they've grew up, how they've been educated, their perception of what risk is. So it's not a physical thing that we can hold in our hand. It's a mental thing.
Absolutely. And that's where it comes to, it's a label. All right. So I define it as a label. So whether, again, if we dilute it all the way down, thinking, feeling, and acting. So if Bruce pushes the button or doesn't push the red button, we will call him safe or unsafe. But that's just the label that we're giving his human performance. Cognitive thoughts, hormonal reactions, muscular output. Did he press the button or not? So safety, is that person safe or not, is just a label that we then give them. A bit like leadership. I couldn't get a bottle and, sorry, Blair, go and put a bit of leadership in there.
Yep.
It's all about thinking, feeling, and acting. And we will judge people on the action, on the muscular output. But where it starts is way back at the thought, that inner voice. Conscious or subconscious, are we aware of it? Are we not aware of it? But then that drives a feeling, that drives a hormonal regulation. Put those two together, and then we get the output. Then we get the output. So I think
that really resonates with me, Bruce. Really resonates.
It's true, and that's one thing that I think would be beneficial to, communicate wider, is that when you're talking about safety, tell me a little bit more about what you mean by safety. Tell me, can you go and put it in a jar? Because again, through having these helpful, empathic, supportive conversations, to understand some basic levels of psychology and even coaching, what we're talking about, the labels that we're offering,
Yeah.
There can be some magic to be had, real magic, Blair, to be had, where you start bringing people together. And when you start bringing people together around that campfire, now we're cooking on gas, literally.
Yeah, one of the best coaches that I've had across my career told me that when you start out in safety, you start to think about, oh, if we do this, we'll be a little bit safer. If we get the guys to act like this, they'll be a little bit safer. But what you don't realise when you're first starting out in your career is safety's just good business. If you're good at the business that you're in and you start to develop the systems that help the business perform, good safety will come at the back of that, and it will really start to join onto that. The other lesson that I learned from him was people will remember some of what you say, a little bit of what you do, but they'll always remember how you make them feel.
That's right.
Yeah. So that really resonates with me, and that feeds into that, definitely.
Yeah, how you make them feel. And that there, how you make people feel will show up, will absolutely show up where that hook. If somebody doesn't say something to you, Blair, it doesn't mean they don't feel it.
Yeah.
What you can have, and again, that's why we try to encourage through the sort of cube that we've got, the 4 behaviors that were going on when things go well. Again, that was a different angle that I took on safety. But if people are feeling that frustration inside, like me and you can be having a conversation.
Yeah.
You're unhappy, but you don't tell me you're unhappy. Or I keep doing something that makes you get angry or frustrated, and I do it again, but I'm not aware because you haven't had that psychological safety, or you don't feel it. You got to say, Bruce, are you aware you're doing this, and this is how it's making me feel? Then that builds up and builds up and builds up to the point where when you're at the end of your tether, boom, the Hulk lets rip. Yeah, the Hulk lets rip. But if we're more in tune with how we're feeling, and we can offer that straight away, then wouldn't it be better to have those conversations in a nice calm way where we feel like we've got that psychological safety to offer how we feel, but also that active listening as well, to encourage that collaborative conversation, because then you get happier people who definitely get more right first time, because there's more learning, there's more backwards and forwards going on in a supportive way, in a solution focused way, rather than trying to apportion blame or just looking after the individual self-blame.
Yeah, totally. It goes back to the old reciprocity thing as well, doesn't it? I did on the show a few weeks ago talking about this, and he spoke about the scales of justice. The guys get aggrieved by the site supervisor, and they wait for the opportune moment to pay back that justice scale. Yeah. They'll wait to the next safety meeting, and they'll sit at the back and they'll say, "This is rubbish. I don't want to be here. You're talking mince," and the message just goes down and down and down. One of the best things I ever saw Eddie do, and this was absolutely fantastic, was he walked into a room of people and they were all sitting, and you could see all the hecklers at the back. The spirits were down in the room. The company were going through a lot of changes. I won't mention who the company was, but the company was going through a lot of changes and the spirits were quite down. And he saw all these guys, and he had these flip charts up at the front, and he was going to speak. And he walked in and he said to a couple of people organising the meeting, "Get those flip charts and put them at the back of the room." So they start taking the flip charts all the way up to the back of the room and turn them round. And all the people are all sitting, still facing the opposite way, and going, "Oh, this is rubbish, totally unorganised. I wish they'd hurry up." And they turn round, and all the seats turn round. And Eddie walks in, and he's at the front, and he says, "That's better. I like to have all the hecklers at the front where I can see them." And it was absolutely brilliant. It totally diffused the situation. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, one of the best techniques that I've used, and I've been in some organisations where redundancy's been on the cards, they're going through consultation, etc., and they've brought me in as part of the process to try to, again, if people are being made redundant, if there's a chance of consultation, how people are thinking, feeling and acting can be very different, and they need support in that particular time, Blair, you know? Yeah. What I've always found is that if you go in any situation, and I've been in some, how can I call it, situations where other people didn't want to go into, you know, with the individuals that were there at the particular time, that you know, that they didn't want to be there, they didn't see the point of it, or etc., or they might have been going through some like other situation like I've just mentioned there. I've never found a situation where if I went into somewhere and just spent 10 minutes saying, "Oh, come on, tell us your story. No, I don't. No, come on, tell us. Well, this is crap or that's crap. All right, tell us a bit more. Just that 5 minutes of saying, tell me your story and being genuinely interested in it.
Yeah.
In an instant, it changes totally, positively changes the dynamic in the room. And I've been in lots of different situations with lots of different employees. And, you know, although the atmosphere may be negative for whatever reason, pull up a chair, come on then. I'm interested, I'm here. Before we start any of this, tell me your story. Honestly, around that campfire, if people take one thing away from this podcast, is that think, okay, am I creating that campfire feeling? Nice and cozy, the fire's crackling, and I'm just listening and allowing people to tell me their story, to tell me their narrative. Because when people feel heard, they're more likely to connect with you as well, Blair, you know?
Yeah, totally. So just to move on again a little bit, Bruce, tell us a bit more about the services that you offer to businesses, how you go about it, how do you get involved, how do you decide who you're going to work with?
Well, again, people usually come to me because, you know, via word of mouth. That I've got a certain way of doing things, and again, people will like it or people don't like it, or people can see the value in it. And again, it tends to be now where, especially now, I've always believed in what people have called mental health or well-being. You know, I've always believed in stuff like that, but I call it firing on all cylinders. Mental health and well-being in some organizations, and again, I get why. It can be seen as like an additional thing or an add-on or a bolt-on. Up until recently, never really been on the cards as much as it is now. But definitely over the past maybe 3 years, maybe a little bit more, it's become more important. It's become more palatable. It's become more fashionable, if you will, your mental health first aid, all this type of stuff. But for me, it's always been about helping somebody to create the environment, different ingredients, where the best version of them shows up, where they can fire on all cylinders. Yeah, when they can fire on all cylinders. And what we do essentially is we work with organizations. So over 6 years, again, slightly different, is that I investigated, now wait for this because it's a bit of a shock horror one here, Blair, right? Why things went well. Yeah, why things went well. So not when they had an incident, not when they had an accident. Most organizations, they have an accident. All right, there'll be an incident investigation team formed. There may be a stop work depending on the severity of the incident. Right, what went wrong, who's to blame, etc., etc. Yeah, that's generally, or maybe it's up until a few years ago, you know, how it went, what caused it, etc. But if something went well, did you hear about it? Was there a stop work? Was there an investigation formed to say, hey, guys and girls, tell me what was going on here so we can amplify it, so we can do more of that? Generally not. And that's what I noticed. So when I had my first organization, when I was working with these big blue chips, I would go in very subjective, very qual-based and say, oh, how were you thinking? How were you feeling? What was going on? What behaviors was actually going on in order for that project to come in on time? In order for it to be a reduction in incidents or on budget or everybody was happy. This type of stuff is what me and my team investigated over a 6-year period on a number of projects. And that's what we come up, the 4 behaviors. Now, the 4 behaviors is what we identified as behavioral trends that could be amplified by other people. And they make sense. But one of the biggest things that we identified was, well, have people actually spend some time looking at what makes them tick? What things do I need to place around me? What structure do I need to create? How do I need to do? What do I need to do more of? What do I need to do less of in order for the best version of me to show up? And quite often people haven't thought about that. You know, people haven't thought about, well, I know what I focus on when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
But you see, when the best version of me is present, when I'm in full flow, when I'm firing on all cylinders, what's actually going on? So that's what we help people do, to actually create something. So our behaviors offer without fear. Having that psychological, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about saying, this is how I'm feeling. Yeah, this is how I'm feeling. Hear others. Again, very simple, active listening, but also hear the stories that you're telling yourself. That inner voice, that inner critic, that hook. Become aware of it. Yeah, so offer without fear, psychological safety, and then the ability to also listen to your own thoughts, as well as listening to other people, whilst controlling your hook. And you need to practice this, you know, to get less defensive, to allow people to continue. Deliver thanks. Now, people, when we talk about deliver thanks, they often think about, well, it's the team. Well, I need to thank other people as well. 2 seconds. that joy starts with you. In fact, Blair, I'll ask you, in the past 12 months, how many times have you stopped and reflected to look at all the effort that you've put in, all the hard work that you've done?
Yeah.
Very rarely, very rarely do we look and think, do you know what? Now, I'm not talking about going in front of a mirror and roaring like a lion and saying, I'm the man. But, if that works for you, so be it. But very rarely do we actually just stop and praise ourselves and reflect and enjoy and embrace the hard work that we put in, because we're on that hamster wheel, the next thing. But then it is also about deliverance thanks to other people, because that does something for the heart. And then the last one is reflect honestly, getting around that campfire, utilizing those behaviors of listening, speaking, being authentic, being collaborative, embracing the human traits that we've all got, so that we can improve moving forward, but we can also appreciate what's also went well. So that's what we do with organizations, but also like we're doing some stuff with the NHS at the moment. When you hear, again, mental health is about speak up, or why didn't you offer this? Well, often the reason why people don't speak up, Blair, is that they don't feel like they can. Is that they haven't got that psychological safety. So with the clients that we work with, is you'll see people like shaking this cube at the boss. Let's call it the boss. Now the boss, she or he may be, at the front of the room, but by shaking this cube, it's almost like the white flag's going up. Boss, is it okay if I can ask you this question? Well, it is, because I've got the cube and there's nothing you can do about it. So it's a permission giver. It's a permission giver. I didn't even intend it to do that. I can't even claim the credit for that. But you see thousands of people waving this and say, I need to speak up and you need to listen as well. But also it's yellow and black for a reason. It's designed, as we were saying before, that beautiful nudge that you were talking about with the Piper Alpha. Yeah. Designed to sit on people's desks. Because we do forget, we do get caught up in the moment. And the reason why it's yellow and black is it's designed to catch your eye. It's designed every now and again, just so you look at it. And again, it's a cube, you can play with it. You're reminding it. When you're playing with it, other people are being reminded because they're seeing the sort of cube turning. But all of that just creates an environment where people are aware of the ingredients, the factors, the things that they need to surround themselves with in order to be the best version of them. And then by doing that, you're actually amplifying the good stuff present when things go well. Happier people getting more right first time, firing on all cylinders because they're more in control of how they're thinking and feeling, Blair.
That's brilliant, Bruce. That's really interesting. It's really groundbreaking as well. How do people get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with you and work with your organisation or bring you in to do some coaching with their staff?
Sure, again, so you can contact me, Bruce at huddleculture.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn, just Bruce Durham, you'll find us there. Or send us smoke signals, a pigeon, however you want to communicate with us. I'm used to it all here in Newcastle, Blair.
And you've got quite a popular YouTube channel as well that we've not mentioned to this point, Bruce.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about that.
So the YouTube's going well. So one of the things, again, I've always been interested in is body language. Yep. For me, now the thing on YouTube is everybody's interested in, are they lying or not? That tends to be the sort of, the anchor why people want to come. But actually, for me, it's never been around about why people are lying. It's about trying to help other people to build a platform of psychological safety. So if I'm coaching somebody, or if I've been involved in accident investigation, etc., and in fact, for the viewers, if you've been involved in an investigation, or even Blair yourself, position yourself here, you'll go in and you'll ask certain questions. Based on the output of your investigation, you may decide to implement certain measures that cost money, based on the information. Well, this went wrong, or I done this, or I done that. Now, it sometimes can be very hard to get down to the exact thing of what went wrong in order to try and fix it. But what can be really helpful is if you're in tune with people and you're noticing when you're asking a question, maybe somebody's doing something. It's not, for me, it's not about like, are they lying? Because you can't tell from body language if somebody's lying or not. All right, you can't. What you can tell if someone's comfortable or uncomfortable. And for me, the benefit has been a safety professional or a leader or a manager, anything where, you're trying to get better at your connection with people, is if they look uncomfortable. It's not like, they look if they're lying, which is where a lot of people are conditioned to look from. Oh, they're lying. It's like, well, if their body language doesn't tie up with what they're saying, I always ask myself, well, why do they feel that they cannot tell me what's going on inside their head? I always reflect on me, so that glasses is filmed looking at me. am I providing that psychological safety so that they can offer that? Can I improve my questioning technique? Can I improve that emotional baseline, that platform that I'm trying to deliver? And for me, over 20 years of sitting in front of thousands, I've coached thousands of people. You sort of notice what's called universal body language tells, that generally everybody does, or idiosyncratic, which is down to the individual, that, Blair might do this or Blair might do that. But you notice this by actually just being in front of thousands of people for hours on end. Tens of thousands of hours I've been in front of people, teams and individuals, coaching, etc. And just notice this body language. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go onto YouTube and I'm going to do some stuff about mental health, well-being, self-development, because that's what I was interested in. And again, talking about the whole thing, feeling that. But then what I noticed is when, I had two subscribers, one was my mum, the other one was my mum. Saying they were two different accounts. I thought, well, nobody's watching these here. So I'd done some investigation and I thought, okay, I'm going to do a body language video. So a lot of the coaching and training that I do within the Optimize program that we offer within Huddle Culture, it includes body language, because if you're not in tune with either the words or the body language, those signals that people are giving off, you could be missing a whole host of information that could help you connect better and help you get more right first time. So there was this big YouTube event. There was two YouTube boxers and they were on stage at a press conference. So I just done, and you could tell it was my very first one, because I was like, there's a camera here and there's some lights here, and I'm trying to, I didn't know how to talk to the camera. But it just happened that there was a lot of people who were searching for these two particular fighters at that time, because they were big YouTube stars. So the platform that I was on is where they're from. And then I sort of woke up one morning, and usually I would get 12 views or something. To be fair, which was just me sort of watching and rewatching my video again, But then it went to 1,000 and then 5,000, and it kept going up and up and up until it got to about 380,000. And then my subscribers started going up and up and up as well. So I thought, there is something here. So I started sharing more. And again, it's just my opinion around about body language and what I've implemented and what I've trained other people in for the past 20 years. And people were, they're interested, but I'll do more of this. I was like a dog with a bone. Yeah, I'm getting some views. But that's really what I'm trying to do. I've been all over on YouTube and other big YouTubers channels. I've got, big boxers who follow me on Instagram and, world champions. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Trainers coming to me. I was on Sky Sports, working with a trainer, but it's all around promoting mental health, firing on all cylinders, thinking, feeling, and acting. And that's really what I'm trying to do with my YouTube channel. Is get it to a certain stage where I've got enough viewers that I can actually go back to what I'm talking about and have a reasonable amount of views on there. And what I'm passionate about is helping people think, feel, and act. And again, some of the, so from my YouTube stuff, I went into coaching boxers, people that you might see on TV, but it always dilutes into, I'm helping you think, feel, and act. That's every single thing. What it comes down to is I'm trying to help that person to optimize their own performance by thinking, feeling, acting in a little bit better way that helps them become a better version of themselves. But YouTube is definitely interesting. Obviously, yourself getting into the podcast, which is what we're doing. It's like a new universe, isn't it, Blair?
Yeah, oh, totally. It's let me talk to some really interesting people. I just put the first video out there. I didn't know who I would get to watch it or if anyone would watch it at all. It's started to make a little bit of traction now. I'm getting people coming back as repeat viewers and things like that. So it's really interesting. It's been a great experience for me, and I hope to keep going with it. We were talking earlier before we came on camera that I'm thinking about converting my garage into a podcast studio just to really ramp it up and start getting a little bit more professional with it. But it's been great.
Absolutely.
And you don't need a lot to get started. I'm working out a conservatory with a laptop and a conference call speaker.
And away you go.
Totally. So thank you very much for coming on the show, Bruce. It's really appreciated. On behalf of the Safer Than Your Average podcast viewers, it's been fantastic. I'm sure this will be a well-watched video. Thanks for your time.
No, thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate it. And hope the podcast goes from strength to strength, Blair. If I can do anything else, just get in contact, buddy.
Much appreciated. Cheers, Bruce.
No problem.
This podcast is sponsored by Inside Out Group, the specialists in high-risk and challenging filming and time-lapse. covering health and safety videos for rail, construction, and infrastructure projects nationwide.